Hey, Mark, thanks for joining us today. This has been a long time coming. You and I have been going back and forth across LinkedIn about when are we going to talk about all the awesome things that we see in our clients, and really appreciate you joining me. And maybe you could give yourself a little bit of an intro for the folks watching.
Sure. So my name is Mark. I'm the president of Plus One Technology. We're an MSP outside of the Philadelphia area, and we've been in business for 20 years.
Well, that's great. I think this is unique. I don't know if I've ever seen two MSPs chatting about what their clients are doing well online. So I'm looking forward to this. So.
This will be unique.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know about you, but when I get called, it's usually because customers aren't happy, or they've had a major problem. But I'm sure, like I do, you see stuff that just like this one customer has this thing nailed. So maybe, I don't know if you want to kick off sharing an idea of something you've seen that maybe the average client doesn't know they're doing well, or something that's kind of a low-hanging fruit that they could do on their own.
Yeah, so we've really over the past couple of months seen a lot of companies start to get more operationally efficient, with a lot of the talk about AI and automation, all this stuff. It's really led to companies really focusing on workflow. Like, what are they doing with workflow? And we're seeing, especially some service industry companies, now be able to work, very seamlessly. Everybody understands exactly what their job is. They show up, they're going through their checklists, and it's really been a, I'd say because of training, good tech, and then good procedure.
Oh, that's awesome. So I don't know, I saw that MIT survey on AI and investments, and how I think it was 95% of all firms are not seeing returns on AI. And I think there's some flaws in that. They only interviewed, I think, 30 different customers. But are you seeing a pretty good return on the investment?
Yeah, I think firms that I would say the biggest thing that we see is returns on doing the simple things first, right? Like, a lot of people want to, automate their entire business, get rid of 50% of their staff, and think everything's going to be hunky-dory in a month, which is just, I know it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I'd say the firms that are having success are picking the small things first. What are the stupid little things that Mary Sue's doing that's sucking up 30 minutes of her work week, and hammering those things out first. And then they're seeing success in that, and that helps them propel towards, all right, well, what's the next thing, and the next thing, and all little things. You got to start, small before you get into these overarching, we're going to change the whole way the company works kind of things.
Yeah, I totally agree. I know we both do a lot of work with accountants, and the amount of time that's in really just processing paper. And we see a lot of firms that are now, like you said, they're kind of tackling quick wins, is what I would call it. Where they can recover time. I can't speak of, I'm north of the border, you're south of the border. We have challenges in terms of getting staff. So we're seeing the accountants, they want to grow, but there's not enough juniors coming in to fill the pipeline. Right. So if they can convert some of these low quality hours to actual high billable return time, or maybe, I don't know, see their kids for a golf game on Friday afternoon if that's what they want. It's been a huge thing. I think I agree that, and I always get nervous when somebody comes in and is like, we're going to flip the firm upside down. And I agree. Let's pick on the small wins, build the foundation. There still is, not so much at the partner level in my experience, but there's still a lot of fear around AI when you get down to the person sitting at the desk. Has that come up with you? Do you find that that's something you guys struggle with, or is it a different viewpoint south of the border?
Yeah, I would definitely say there's definitely, I would say every conversation almost kicks off with, what about security? How do I make sure that the company data is secure? Is this thing going to come in and update every record in my tax software and blow everything up? And, there's a lot of people afraid of kind of the worst case scenarios. And you have to make sure that you're putting guardrails around that. And I think that's when it's, you need to be working with somebody who's done this before and it's not their first time. Don't call up cousin Bob who just graduated from college, and is willing to help out for free, and puts in place an automation that does all kinds of crazy things. We've seen a couple horror stories like that, so you want to avoid that thing, and make sure that whatever you're doing, is tested in a test environment before you're rolling it out to where it's going to email people and all those types of things.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've had a number of calls where, with all the things on YouTube now, folks think they can just vibe code an industry level app.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it's you can do a lot. I'm not digging on vibe coding because there's a lot of things you can do, but accountancy is a highly regulated industry. Maybe that's not where you want to, start with accessing.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. You definitely have to have a level of cautiousness.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I'll just add on, like, one of the things that I see more so in the last, I would say, like, about 24 months is firms that recognize times are changing and that they need to think about the way to be more efficient, to deliver better outcomes for clients, perhaps adding new business services in that are complementary. Thinking more about the future, I think, is something I'm seeing more and more from the firms we deal with, and recognizing that technology plays a bigger part in it, that it's not just a cost center anymore. So kind of comes up with your AI chat for sure.
I think they're definitely seeing I think a lot of firms are recognizing that the bottom quartile of work is becoming commoditized. If your basic bookkeeping, your basic tax prep, all the basic things that accountants do, a lot of that is being automated or with AI or people offshoring all that work somewhere else. So you need to compete in the higher value areas and add more high value stuff.
100% agree. Yeah, and I think too that even though maybe bookkeeping shouldn't be offshored for some folks, the nature of the clients is that just it's not as important. The high level guidance and strategy and tax and wealth planning, like all those different things, advisory services, I guess, to call it sort of a bigger. There's huge value there, and I know, and in our area, there's a gap. I think a lot of end users and customers of our accountancies don't even know that that's really available to them. So there's lots of opportunity, but there's only supposedly there's only 2,080 work hours a year. And most of my accounts are billing way more than that. So there's only so much time. So you're right. If you can free up some of that bottom quartile and then push meaningful work down, giving those higher up in the chain more time to do, higher value work, it's a win for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you see that they're doing really, really well, or?
I would say just more of a focus. I think firms are actually looking at how the workflows work. I think a lot of leadership level, like people in leadership positions, just they didn't know how things worked, And then when we go through a process of documenting, like, all right, well, this is how this process works. A lot of times they're like, oh my God, why are we doing it that way?
No.
And most of the time the answer is, well, we've done it that way for 15 years, and then and a lot of times it's not AI, it's not automation. It's just, this process is just broken and we need to just redo it and streamline it. And there's a huge efficiency gains in just spending the time to understand how your business actually works from initial customer call to finalizing whatever you're delivering.
I 1,000% agree. The number of times I meet with senior leadership and go, okay, explain to me how this works, and then actually backstep through the process and get somebody like mid-process that goes, well, that's how it worked 5 years ago. Now we actually do it this way, and so I totally agree. Having sort of more of a, one of the things I kind of made a note here is documenting that tribal knowledge. They're doing a better job of not necessarily like a full documented SOP, but understanding how the process works and where there are opportunities to make it more efficient or do things a better way, for sure.
Yeah, because you can't do automation or AI without that first. If you don't understand how the process works, you definitely can't automate it.
Not well, anyways. I mean, you can make it break faster.
Yeah, you can make some mistakes. Yeah.
And I think, there's a lot, to me, one of the benefits of automation, if you do it right, is when it breaks the same way every time. And so it's actually easier to fix than people, because I don't know about the joke about like your car was built on a Friday or a Monday morning, like you don't want either one of those.
Yeah.
And I think people they don't always do the same thing the same way. So it's actually harder to figure out the mistakes when the robots aren't involved than when they are,
Yeah.
for sure. So yeah, that's really interesting. Really interesting. And I don't know, I'll throw this out there. I think the other thing I'm seeing too is, and you touched on it a little bit when you talked about the AI and security, but there seems to finally be acknowledgement at most levels that security is now just table stakes. Like you have to have MFA, you have to have a good, MXDR or MDR or some sort of advanced cybersecurity product. I don't see I don't have to teach people about why it's important anymore. There may be discussions around execution and value props and all those kinds of things, but I can't remember the last time I had to explain to somebody why they needed multi-factor authentication, which is quite honestly very refreshing for me. Nothing, I'm sure, like you, nothing keeps me up at night like somebody who doesn't have MFA installed. That just it boggles my mind. So for sure.
Yeah, I think the security is critical, and I think people have finally been beaten enough from so many directions that they get it. For a while it was just us, and then we added the insurance companies, and now we've added the government, and now there's enough people beating them over the head that says this is important that they finally just gave up.
Yeah. I'm actually reading a book called They Tell Me This Is How the World Ends. And it's all about cyber hacking all the way back to 2000. And, I think I'm going to get rid of my toaster, my alarm clock, everything.
Nice.
So it's the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of like, the skill and it's targeted attacks, all those kinds of things. But it was 2000 as well. So what's happening today that people aren't even aware of? And so I'm very happy to hear when firms say to me, I really care about my clients' data. I have to make sure we're secure. I want when we implement AI, I want to make sure that there's guardrails in place that, it respects data residency or compliancy laws or all those kinds of things. So yeah, it's nice to see some things coming along that way. Is there anything else you think that they're doing really, really well?
I would say that we, because of this kind of movement, we're seeing companies just getting processed better. They're getting and a little bit more sophistication around. And I think some of this is just because we're seeing so much consolidation in almost every industry. So companies are just becoming more. The companies that are left are more mature. So they're learning that how important it is to have good employee onboarding, how important it is to have defined job roles, so you don't have people just running around and it's like, well, what does Carl do? Well, he just kind of fixes whatever's on fire today, and having those things where, companies are actually now when you go through and we're getting new employee requests, it's like this person has this role, they do this job function, and it's much more defined where, 4 years ago we would get employee requests. It's like Susie's starting tomorrow and we're going to figure out what she's going to do.
Yeah. Do you know what her email address should be? No, we'll figure that out tomorrow. Yeah, I totally agree. I think the other thing they're doing way better too is cloud adoption. I think is something that even though there's a lot of firms that haven't specifically set out a cloud strategy, they're kind of inadvertently getting there by implementing M365 and getting Exchange off their sites and leveraging SharePoint and OneDrive. And, as you know, as well as I do, a lot of the practice management apps are now, cloud enabled at minimum and some leveraging AI. So I think, for the future, cloud infrastructure is going to continue to be the thing that helps firms scale and helps deliver AI solutions. So I'm happy to see that even though there may not be a very specific, we are going to be cloud first or we are going to be mobile first, that they're adopting it in just the fact of doing their daily work. It seems like kind of like you talked about, we don't know what Jane's going to do. It's pretty rare that I now hear, well, there's a server in that broom closet over there, but we're not sure what it does anymore. Be, most of the time people are now showing off their empty server rack, or maybe they've got a video recorder or lock management lock, but so much of that is gone, which for most of our clients has been a huge thing to enable them to grow and scale and really align expense with the workload,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to having to pre-buy because we're going to grow. I got to buy 300,000 servers because I want to grow from 150 staff to 300, but I have to buy them now because I don't know when that's going to happen. It's nice to be able to leverage the cost when the opportunity actually exists, and it's not just for
Yeah. And it really enables remote workforce, which I don't know how much you guys see it up there, but we see more and more almost remote from the start companies that will probably never have an office.
Yeah, I think it's definitely coming. Again, one of the things that Canada's always struggled with is internet access. We just don't have it like you guys do in the US. It's way more expensive too. But Starlink has been a huge advantage to lots of folks here that can now, I know one accountant that literally, he runs a large firm, virtual ready firm, and he works from his trailer. So he travels 12 months of the year and works from his RV with his kids, and if not for Starlink, that wouldn't even be an option. So I think that mobile first, and it kind of ties into the whole access to talent. If you're not building your firm to support remote work, and you're forcing them to commute to wherever you happen to be, you're shrinking your talent pool by, I don't know, like how many hours is it for each coast from where you are?
Yeah.
You can't pull that talent for sure.
And it enables, we see a lot of firms that they're using the different economies across geographic regions. We see a lot of firms that are headquartered in California or New York, high dollar areas, hiring people in, the rural Midwest, because now they can, just the cost of the labor is much cheaper in those areas. And they don't have to support all the infrastructure and higher salaries in those high dollar areas, but they can still be, have their fancy New York address.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people hear that and they go, oh, they're not paying what people are worth. It's one of the things I hear up here. And what there is no recognition of is that generally the reason they're paid less is the cost of living is way less.
Yeah.
And there's, for me, I like the big cities to visit, but I'm not interested in, living amongst 40 million people. So, if I'm going to be in the car for an hour, I would like it to be moving and not, going 20 yards down the road. So, I don't disagree with you. The ability to have access to, talent, whether it be because of lower cost or better capability, but cloud first is really what enables that. I'm sure you're aware as well. I know our team's aware that VPN access and RDS and all those things that used to be the way we did this are now massive security holes, and would like to get rid of every one of them if we could, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I'm also seeing a big shift, and you kind of touched on this, to be honest. I think I'm seeing a shift in what I would call reactive leadership, reactive IT technology leadership, into recognizing there's more strategic benefits to it. We're not getting as many. My server is still running, I don't know, 2008 or 2012, and Microsoft turned off all the things, so now I have to change. We're actually seeing it become, part of the annual budget discussions, and not just like, okay, we're going to put this number of dollars to tech, but line items within that, like this is what cloud infrastructure is going to look like. Here's what staffing looks like. Those kinds of things, and a lot of discussions, especially in accountancy, around what plugins do we need to consider bringing in to enable AI audit or alignment to tax practices, those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think firms have seen the ROI on some of those investments, and most of them at this point they've understood or experienced the pain when they don't make those proactive replacements. And so they're like, well, we don't want to deal with that again. When you have a 8-year-old server that dies because you ran it longer than you should have, usually you only have to live through that once to not make that that wrong decision again. So I think a lot of people are definitely making those conservative approach to, hey, we know that the life cycle on these things is this, and we need to make sure that we're replacing them. And they see the power of the tools. And honestly, I think productivity and efficiency gains from some of these tools are so much higher than the actual investment. I mean, people wonder why AI adoption's so high. It's like, well, you can use AI for like $20 a month. I mean, when was the last time we had a technological advancement where it was going to cost you $20 a month? I mean, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point. I was actually chatting with somebody the other day, and I think that AI really has the potential to be the next industrial revolution. I don't think that it's there, like it's not clearly defined that that's what's going to happen. But as you said, for $20, you can have a really strong copywriter, a really strong marketing person, a data analytics person, somebody to help you like with code. Now, please don't copy and paste it into the Wall Street. It does require, I actually had a big conversation with a large firm the other day, and I said, I really think a big part of the firm of the future is having a really solid prompt library and training critical reasoning. And those two things together, you can go a long way into the future, just on a $20 a month ChatGPT, subscription. So
you don't need much, which is, different than, people relate this to the cell phone, the advent of the internet and all. Like, to adopt those things, it was a much higher dollar figure than this, and the ROI on some people hate the term ROI, but the return you're going to get on it is maybe even larger than those things, and for a much less cost.
Yeah, I think that's you're absolutely right. I was just quickly Googling here. So in 1990, we bought our first laptop, and it was $5,000. And today that's $13,063.53. So if you think about, the investment to get started, you're right. It's the barriers to entry really are not financial anymore. They're more so about making sure you pick the right process, you document it correctly, frame what's acceptable within the firm in terms of use, and put in good data guardrails. So yeah, I don't disagree. And I think those that are being overly cautious, I would say, maybe too conservative, you're missing an opportunity. There are ways to get started without exposing the entire firm's data set to AI. You can pick off a small little bucket of things you want to work on, put it in a guardrail, container, and run it there and maybe don't give it to every single person in the firm. Start with partners. Start with them if you just want to get training and all those kinds of things. Get them started for sure.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, like how much you can do, and you don't even need that much to get started. You don't, because it's a language model. There's no training people on how to code. It's just plain English talking like you would talk to another person. Now, sure, there's some training that people can do to make it better and understand and use different prompts and all that stuff that can enhance that ability. But to start, you need nothing.
Yeah, and I think prompting, like again, that's a great thing to touch on. Like, I think there's this perception of that it's coding, and for anyone who's watching this and goes, well, what is prompting? And an example would be like, please act as an expert copywriter in the tech industry and write me a blog on blah 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 blah. You're right. It's not code, and it doesn't have to be complicated. You're just effectively telling the AI how you want it to behave. And so I think lots of people hear a prompt and they go, well, what is that? They get concerned. It's not complicated. You're right. And you really, don't upload your firm data to chat. Please, anybody else watching this, no free tools. Like, make sure you're using something that, you've paid for, and if your firm has a policy, that you're compliant with that policy. But, just going on a chat and saying, help me polish this email or things like that, it's not directly connected. You can play with it and not expose too much. So, I would say get in there and play with it for sure.
Yeah. Especially if you're just trying to write like a marketing email or something like that, if you're not doing anything with proprietary company information, you can experiment. You're not going to break something, as long as you're using a tool that you're allowed to use, that's safeguarded the way it's supposed to be safeguarded. There's, I think there is a little bit of level of fear, I think, in it for some employees, and it's like there's nothing the way that we've set this up that you can break. You know, so you're not going to bring down the internet by putting something into this text box.
No. Well, no. If you are, then we've done something terribly wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you had to leave one piece of advice for somebody who's watched this around, what they should consider doing better or what they could leverage, what would that be?
I would say the biggest thing that we're talking to companies about right now, and we're seeing kind of almost like revolution in this is start that business process, what we call business process optimization journey. Like start just looking before you can do any of these fancy automation, AI, any of this stuff. You have to just sit down and understand what the day looks like for every one of your people.
Yeah.
What are they doing when they come in from work and they're sitting at their desk? Like what are the things they're doing? Sit with them, interview them, and just document what all those processes are. And then you'll immediately have a list of things that you can improve because it'll be blatantly obvious.
I actually said it earlier, like, we've been doing it this way for 15 years. That's my immediate red flag of I'm going to go dig into that process. That's true. Things have changed in 15 years. And we just did a small project for an accounting firm around end of season closing of files. And this small little project is going to save them about 2,000 hours a year in admin time. So, and it was just, our job is to ask dumb questions.
Right.
Why do you do that? Why did you do that? What happens next? And really kind of guide the process so that people can kind of come to their own conclusions like, why are we doing that? And then taking it and, there's certainly AI as part of it, but a lot of it is just process automation. Mm-hmm. There's not necessarily any AI involved. It's taking that, new streamlined step and just using technology to flow it as opposed to lots of times. I mean, again, we do lots of AI too, but there's lots of times where it's really just standardizing the process, getting it in flow and getting it rolled out. So that's, I agree with you, taking a step back from the day-to-day tactical stuff and looking at what you're doing, thinking about what your client wants from you and blocking out that process to go, how can we solve for, internal pain, ideally solving a customer pain at the same time. That to me is where the win-win really is.
Yeah. Yeah. You nailed it.
All right, Mark, I really appreciate you joining me today. And,
Thank you.
We'll do it again sometime soon.
You got it.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.